So, The Boys Season 3, Episode 5. Man, another interesting episode with the ending definitely spelling interesting things for the future episodes. It really does feel like things are ramping up now. We're over halfway throughout the season, so given that ending with Soldier Boy, Billy Butcher, Hughie, and what they plan to do is something that we saw somewhat coming, especially with what we learned with Kimiko in this episode. But it's definitely something that might not actually be the best solution that the boys have to their problem that is Homelander. Even though, obviously, it is a solution. It's kind of that thing of replacing one evil with another evil. And I don't think we've even remotely seen the limits of Soldier Boy and how much of a douchebag that he is as well. So as usual, guys, I would love for you to contribute your theories as to where things can go down in the comments below as we go through this recap, breakdown, and overall review. And so this episode picked up with some insight into some of the suffering that Soldier Boy went through. Experiments to the point of skin durability, even with the inside tissues of his mouth, infecting him with like radiation, which Billy Butcher seems to think is what gives him that new ability, the special ability that it seems like they're going to weaponize against Homelander. We had MM confront Billy. As we saw this scene in the trailer, we knew that this would be happening, and he says, you know, the whole point, literally the whole point of what we do is that no one should have that kind of power. And that is true, and I've had this somewhat debate with friends as well. It's like some argue that this is really uncharacteristic of Billy, but at the same time, to play devil's advocate, A, it's kind of like temp fee, so it's not permanent. But I do want to factor in that I wonder what the repercussions are. We still don't know. They keep kind of waving it in our face. This is an experimental drug, so I am wondering what that will do for people like Hughie in particular. But as Billy says himself as well, I happen to live right down here, mate, on planet Earth. Like, trying to say that he wouldn't be like the other supes with those powers, who often, as he goes on later in the episode, say to Maeve, it's almost like Marvel's super soldier serum, like exaggerating the worst parts of you. He's saying, well, I live right down here on Earth, mate. It's an interesting debate to have. I would love to know your thoughts. Do you think this makes Billy a hypocrite? I see both sides, to be honest, and if you're up against people like Homelander, you've already exhausted all options. There's a new drug, Temp V. Granted, it is kind of stupid to take it because you have God knows what health repercussions it could have, especially as it's temporary. Like, you know, Hughie, for example, can temporary teleport, like reorganizes molecules into another place. It just kind of makes you think like what that would do. Even though you can temporarily handle it, your body can in that moment, surely that has to have some kind of long-term effects. But at the same time, what else are you gonna do? It's not permanent compound V that would make Billy a proper outright hypocrite. It's just temporary. So I think there is an argument to be made there, especially if you're out of all options. No one should have that power, yes, but if you're going up against the kind of people who use that power for bad, and you're only wielding that weapon to take them down, then I think maybe it is an option, but maybe some people might view it as kind of like, I don't know, random analogy comparison here, the One Ring. Like, Boromir wanted to equip it to do good, use the enemy's weapon against them, but it doesn't always work like that. So maybe some people see it like that those people who use Temp V will ultimately still, maybe like Hughie, feel powerful and kind of get that kind of power trip that quite often a lot of supes do. Speaking of power trips, there's no other bigger power trip than Homelander, because after Ashley has kind of accepted the nomination of CEO of Vought International, Homelander comes in, we have the board members introduce themselves, it's going smoothly at first, but then we have like an innocent question from Maureen saying their margins might drop a bit with recent changes. What does he plan to somewhat handle that in the earnings call? And that just straight up, it's one of those things where because you don't really know the answer to that, sometimes ego might get in the way and you kind of project out, and that is 100% what Homelander is doing here. Kind of like later in how he flexes the similar line to Starlight about, you know, well, some of us adults have to worry about the IBTA or whatever it's called, share stocking things, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And in this moment, he didn't know how to answer it. So he's like, do you think you know better than me? And again, Homelander is a big, insecure, babbling pile of mess, and yeah, this lady had to get out of there fast. This episode just once again furthers how much control and how many people within Vought now, especially as Homelander is at the top, are fearing him. But we're also starting to see cracks. Even with A-Train this episode, even with Ashley a little bit later, definitely some interesting things with regards to those developments, because in particular A-Train, I have been wondering what is his purpose this season, where is he going? As Starlight said, why are you so desperate to be with the people who hate you? And it's like, true, yeah, like, I mean, we know he doesn't want to become irrelevant, so one way to stay relevant for him is to kind of stay with the people who hate him, and that's on the Seven. I mean, think how famous the Seven are, but I'm wondering, like, where is it going to go? But this episode with what happened to his brother definitely makes me feel like A-Train might be doing a kamikaze this season, but more on that in a little bit. Meanwhile, with the Deep, I should have probably mentioned this a second ago, he's come into the crime analytics area. Starlight was trying to use them later, but oh, lo and behold, he has fired most people because he went through their recent tweets, and because they're not team players, as in they were slightly critical of Homelander, clean house. As we know, the Deep, more than even A-Train, is like an emissary for Homelander within Vought. So once again, just trying to hold on to power. His wife is like miming the lines that he is saying. With the Deep in particular, I'm also wondering where he's going to go, because with A-Train, he's got like a personal motivation this episode now. As with a lot of characters, Supe collateral, right? His brother is now Supe collateral. He might be fueled into kind of fighting back or doing something that finally doesn't mean sucking up to Homelander and Vought. But the Deep, I really don't know about the Deep. I just feel like something like stupid should just happen to him. Like finally, one day, Homelander just gets so annoyed, just in general, and takes it out on the Deep and lasers straight through him. I did kind of find it funny when Hughie had to break the news to Starlight about him taking Temp V. Hughie at first was like, oh yeah, I hated it, but really he loved it. And I thought that he was just going to maintain that he hated it, so I'm glad that he was just admitting here that he felt strong, he felt like he could be useful for once, rather than just almost being dead weight. But the big concern here, of course, for Starlight is that that was dangerous, Hughie. I can't lose you, like, because she's really losing a lot of people. Sure, she wasn't mega close to Supersonic anymore, but that was just an atrocity last episode. And now, more than ever, Homelander has got her right where he wants her, and is holding Hughie as collateral. And we know Homelander can do something like killing Hughie with a click of his finger, so him actively working against Homelander like this, now taking Temp V, seems like Hughie's making bolder steps, and as the other person in the relationship, you would be really worried about that. Which is when Maeve arrived to Butcher's, and she gave him more Compound V, 24, Temp V, and I think we knew in this moment, okay, so that means Hughie's taking more, especially after how infatuated he was, looking at his own little glow vein going down his arm or whatever. That turned into a fun time for both of them. Let's talk about the Kimiko side of things this episode, and also Frenchie, and maybe a little bit of theory crafting here, but it feels maybe obvious to me. I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong. Let me know your thoughts. But first of all, we had Nina there. She is annoyed that it kind of went a bit south, in her opinion, with the intel that she gave Butcher, saying 10 dead Russian soldiers, a classified lab destroyed, 3 of my contacts have now disappeared as a result of this. Even though French was like, yeah, but like this was arrangement between you and Butcher, she's just like, no, you introduced me, so I want you to kill this man and his daughter. He says she's just a child, and she's like, that hasn't stopped you before. So Frenchie has done some very dark things before. And clearly he doesn't want to do anything here, which leads to that later point in where he gets taken away. But just before we get to that, we have Kimiko waking up, and as we all expected, she is powerless. Like, she tries to test it out through lifting something, doesn't work. Love seeing how happy Kimiko is here. And again, as we theorized about last episode, the weapon itself is Soldier Boy's ability, and how some people are speculating maybe it's temporary, and that could still be true, but the way they're at least selling it this episode is that her powers are gone. They're not like temporarily gone, but who knows, they could be. They are gone, at least for now, right? So Kimiko is powerless, but they could pull a 180. For now, like, at least we know, even if not permanently, you can get completely depowered. So imagine that blast going on Homelander. So I'm super interested for the episodes ahead, because obviously it's going to be kind of hard, because this weapon of Soldier Boy's that comes out of him takes some charging up. Then you got to like laser it with a guy, and all it takes is for Homelander to like get out the way. But I think it could be like a Thanos moment. For example, you know, when we had Iron Man, Spider-Man, everyone like holding down Thanos to try and keep him still. Well, if we have souped up Butcher, Hughie, Maeve, etc., well then you can kind of put the blast there, even though I guess the others might want to get out the way. I don't know how it's exactly going to go down, but let me know your thoughts there. But we do have a good shot at depowering Homelander, so someone can indeed finish him off, but I don't know if it's going to go that smoothly. I absolutely adore Kimiko's imagination, because she spoke in this moment, and that's where she's so happy. she starts daydreaming like a musical. That was hilarious, and I really enjoyed it. Again, it's just so, I feel so happy seeing Kimiko happy. I think a lot of people can agree with that. She even kisses Frenchie, and this is what I mean. I keep adding layer onto layer. You just want to be so happy for them, but with the whole Frenchie thing, he knows he needs to do something. He's checking like a text out or whatever. He acts really awkward, goes to get a coffee, but that's when he gets taken by Nina. Now, I think this is kind of cliche speculation, or like typical speculation, but what are the odds of Frenchie dying? Because I'm thinking, isn't it way too predictable for him to be taken by Nina, and like with how much they're like hammering down with how they want to get away, how romantic and how happy Kimiko is, for just Frenchie to die? Maybe it's just so predictable that it won't happen, but maybe they're relying on us thinking that, and they'll just do it anyway. There is a part in the trailer where he seems to be like in restraints. I assume that's where Nina's got him tied up. I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on this. I think he probably might die, and I guess Kimiko could stay in the show. But maybe she doesn't if her powers don't return. But if they do return and it just turns out, because I can imagine him doing that, as I said, like, she thinks she's free, she feels like she's liberated. Sure, it sucks that her fresh start with Frenchie is gone because he might die. But then, oh, they rub it in even more, kind of like how shows and dramas often do. Oh, the powers were never really fully gone. They've come back, and she's sad even more and fueled with a hatred more than ever, and so stays with the boys. With A-Train and Ashley and A-Train's portion of this episode, oh man, I thought it was just going slow paced at first, but then things got crazy, so it feels like Ashley is humoring A-Train, you know, so okay, you know, we'll give you what you want. So they bring in Blue Hawk, because, you know, we had A-Train trying to appeal to his brother and all the people in the neighborhoods of where Blue Hawk is patrolling and being really excessive, as A-Train says. And you can tell, like, this guy, Blue Hawk, when he comes in, he's just so disingenuous. And so, later on in the episode, we have him go to his brother's place. That really catches him off guard. I know A-Train is kind of trying to do right here, but yeah, just coming in with a camera crew, it just seems a little bit like, But he's like, fine, you know, there's an apology going forward. And Blue Hawk couldn't come across, as I said, any more fake, disingenuous as hell. And he's making like a 10k donation to this place, but that's when you have some people in the audience being like, yeah, but how does that really help, like, this guy, you know, he was unarmed, what about that? And this obviously speaks to the larger Black Lives Matter thing, because he's just like, Soup lives matter, and he keeps going ham on that, all lives matter. And this ends up with him, oh my god, like, in a true boys moment, wrecking people in the audience. He, like, throws people against the wall to the levels of where it could break their back, and funnily enough, I didn't even mean to set that up, that's exactly what happens to A-Train's brother. He's lost his ability to speedster run, I guess, or walk, and now his brother can't even walk again. With such severe damage to his spine, he'll never walk again. And on the TV, once again, to rub it even more to A-Train, and I hope he feels like an incredible idiot here, especially with how much he sucked up to Vought, is that, damage control, with Blue Hawk quite literally saying, to think my donation to the community would be met with such intolerance by a few bad apples just breaks my heart, just breaks it. Now, I'm not saying this will be the sole thing that makes just, I don't know, A-Train go up against Homelander and Kamikaze, but you have to think now that this has set him on a path to be like, you know what, this has angered me to the point where the relevancy doesn't matter as much, and he does something, but if he does something, it's got to be something that gets him killed. I don't know whether that's using his speed to do something that ends up just giving him a heart attack, so ironically he dies, or do you think he's going to do something that will actually aid the boys, people like Starlight, Maeve, against Homelander? If that's the case, I do think if A-Train joins the party when they're taking down Homelander, he might be the first one to go splat with the heat vision. It's like, even though he signed up and he was meant to serve some bigger purpose, he's just like one of the first hits to die. But we're gonna have to wait and see there. Let me know your ideas. So Soldier Boy, he gets back from Russia. We see him really kind of spooned out in modern day in the city. He sees guys together and he's just like, wait, you know, what's going on there? He's not used to seeing that. And then when he hears the same Russian song, I believe, that was playing on the radio to where, you know, he had his torture or experiments being put onto him, he gets triggered. And it seems like this ability of his gets, you know, triggered with anger, because that's what we see later with Crimson Countess and whatnot. This is where he releases that energy. I mean, you literally see that woman get vaporized. This is where we cut to people noticing it on the news. So we have Homelander, but that was actually after seeing MM go to pick up Janine, but he doesn't actually go through with it because he's really annoyed at obviously what he saw. It brings back his own PTSD of his family dying. More people just died, around 19 people, I believe, in once again Anti-Supe collateral. But there was another big thing to this, and that it shows this demographic who are still completely deceived by Homelander, where we have Todd just basically saying Homelander's great, you know, he's greatest hero, he saves thousands of people, stands up to the crooks, corporations, the legacy media. And when we had Homelander looking at the news report, let me know what you thought of this. Do you think that he was fascinated by it, kind of annoyed, like, oh, who is this other powerful person? Or do you think that he just wishes that he could kind of do a similar thing? Because they played that sound effect where it's like he's completely zoned out, looking at this person blast a bunch of innocent people. So I've got a feeling that he's thinking, man, I wish I could let my hair down like that. Possibly even giving him some confidence that, you know, with the whole threats of, oh yeah, if we release the flight video, he threatened, oh yeah, well, he would just kill 1 million people. But he's never obviously just done it. Maybe now he's thinking, oh, with them branding Soldier Boy here, not that they know it's Soldier Boy, but like, oh, you know, the Bureau of Superhuman Affairs are calling this person a supervillain. He's thinking, maybe being a supervillain is actually something that, you know, isn't so bad. Because people are reporting about it, he gets to do what he wants to do with no limits. Maybe I should be a supervillain. And so the boys get on top of it, signs up, and he's already got a bit of a lead as to where Soldier Boy would go, and that is to the Legend, who was actually the VP of Hero Management at Vought before Stillwell came in. So he came here to pick up his super suit, and he asked after where Crimson Countess, his old girlfriend, is staying. So the boys obviously thought, well, he's going there, and the Legend, as he's called, didn't get a feeling that it would be a happy reunion. So this set up that back portion of the episode, but what we didn't know at the time was Hughie and Billy's plans behind the scenes that they didn't tell to MM. Before we get to that, though, we have Maeve, who is really walking the line here. I mean, I get why she's saying all this stuff, but if you don't want him to laser you, and you see what he's willing to do to people of the Seven, you know, like Supersonic, even though Maeve is a little bit higher up, she basically says it to his face, I've always hated you, and this kind of nicely mirrors, if you will, the ending discussion between that of Crimson Countess and Soldier Boy. So he's like, I loved you. She's like, I never loved you. We all kind of hated you back then. And he's just like really confused, disillusioned by that. And you have that kind of same thing going on here with Homelander being like, oh, you know, it's lonely at the top, but at least we had each other. I kind of loved you in my own way kind of thing. She's like, I never did. I never did. So clearly trying to show the parallels between how Homelander and Soldier Boy have similar things going on there, even with the people surrounding them in their own teams with respect to the Seven and Payback. And it makes you think, well, even though the boys are going to use Soldier Boy, just how similar is he to Homelander? But Maeve gets grabbed by Black Noir, and she's been put into like a wellness retreat or whatever. So I wonder how long this is going to get her out the picture for. We did have Starlight go to Ashley, and Ashley for a split second was almost cracking through, but out of fear, she kind of slams back down saying, I am the CEO, next time make an appointment, just showing how much of a hold Homelander has. And then we get to that ending part of the episode where we have Crimson Countess taking a private call from a viewer, if you will, and that viewer is Seth Rogen. This was definitely interesting. We'll get into it, but you know, demonetization and all of that. We have a little kind of stream or like live call with him, interrupted by Billy just diving over the bed and grabbing her. She is now fearing for her life because it's evident at this point she was complicit in whatever happened. Turns out that called Starlight. This is when we have a little bit of continued drama between Hughie and Starlight, and they go quite far away, to be honest, quite conveniently. I feel like the explosion in the distance that goes on to happen was, you know, quite down the drive. In this moment between them, though, you see that part of Hughie come through. It's like, you know, I can save you for once. And she's just like, I don't need you to save me, Hughie. I just want you. I feel like they're going down that kind of storyline where Hughie's almost in like a getting lost to drugs kind of way, but not necessarily to Temp V. Is just getting lost to his almost like Butcher in a way. There's this drive to stop and make a difference, to stop Supes. And also, obviously, yeah, Temp V gives him something that he's never had before, and that is the power to stand up for himself, save people, do something for once. So that's definitely going to throw a spanner in the works. And let me know if you think that actually might be not really it for Starlight and Hughie, but it does seem to be going to a shady direction. But we'll revisit that in a second, because that is when Soldier Boy arrives, suit equipped, talks to Billy. He kind of says, I have a proposition for you. What you lot call a team up. It kind of cuts, and he goes in, talks to Crimson Countess, learns what we somewhat already went over about how she never loved him. He always thought that she was going to come and save him, but she never did. He even assumed that she got paid by the Russians, but she didn't even do that. Like, she just hated him, so was more than happy for Soldier Boy to be taken away. So his chest lights up. I do argue, why doesn't that tear a hole in his suit? I guess it's just the comic book logic there with how even though a blast comes out that vaporizes everything else, I don't know why, but a fabric weaved suit from Vought somehow survives that, but don't ask questions, I guess. I feel really bad for MM here. I get why Billy and Hughie didn't want to tell him because he wouldn't have wanted to go for it, but this is where the big debate comes in. And this is where even Starlight comes back into it. You have her flexing her Starlight eyes, and Hughie stands in front of her, as if in the way between her and Soldier Boy. So I do like what the show has done here. It's kind of like adding in a tangled mess of wires. Like, you're trying to unravel it, and you're seeing perspectives from all sides almost. You're feeling bad for Starlight, you're feeling bad for MM, you get why Hughie wants to do this, you get why Butcher is utilizing Soldier Boy. So it's really like a mess here. The way I see it is that sure, some people might say they could always find another way, but like things with Homelander are getting so bad, like insanely bad, and so oppressive that yes, we don't know the full extent of how bad Soldier Boy is yet, and I know that he's bad, but when you're already where you're at, to talk and kind of at least do a team up with Soldier Boy, but, you know, kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, temporarily, like the Temp V is kind of a bit of a pattern here, temporarily do that to take down Homelander. I would love to know where you're at with that, but I do get where the other characters are coming from, but I'm a little bit surprised actually that Starlight isn't a little bit more on board with it, knowing and being in the thick of it herself. But at the same time, with her learning of all of this stuff, it is kind of all at once and very shocking, so she might just be pissed off for the time being, but maybe might come around to seeing why Hughie's made the decision that he's made. Either way, though, I don't think this is probably even going to work out. I just feel like Homelander's still going to carry on. The attempt will be failed, kind of like with Thanos, right? You know, they get to a point where the glove is trying to be, the gauntlet is being taken off, but it doesn't work out. I don't know. That's what I kind of like about this show. So much at stake, so much of the character's own issues, and yet it's all tangled up in such a way where we don't know where it's really going to land. Will it land even in the best option for everyone? If Homelander did go down, is Soldier Boy any better? I don't know, but I definitely enjoyed this episode, and I feel like every episode after this is going to be nuts. Like, really nuts. I think we're going to get some of the craziest, I mean, obviously as we get closer to the end, but some of the craziest stuff we've seen all season so far over the next few episodes, especially now that Jensen Ackles is in it more than ever. Even in this episode, we only got like small portions of him, so Soldier Boy in the next few episodes, I think we're going to go ham. But let me know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments below, guys. Obviously your theories, leave a like, especially if you got this far. It really does help these videos out. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow boys and soups in the next video. Goodbye.